Hey, I wanted to talk about high school record keeping today. I know that that can really freak out parents when they start homeschooling. They start thinking about what about college? What about scholarships? What about the prom? And what about record keeping? Right. And I really thought that if we could just talk through record keeping so that you understand step by step exactly what's involved, break it down into its small chunks so that you really understand exactly how easy high school record keeping can be. I thought that would be really helpful, wouldn't it? So let's start out by talking about the four different kinds of record keeping strategies that you'll generally see among homeschoolers. Okay. The first one is by far and away the most popular form of record keeping, and that is the tubbies. Okay. It's nothing to do with the weight of the homeschooling parent. These are the homeschool parents that have a giant Rubbermaid tub in the corner of their schoolroom. And everything that their child does that is wonderful or educational or seems like it may be important, they put those things into the giant Rubbermaid tub. Now, we'll see that is an extremely effective method of homeschooling. You can get done almost everything you need to get done if that's your method. And more power to you if that is you. Okay. It's fine. You can keep doing it that way. The second kind of homeschooler is the cubbies. And these are the kinds of people that have a drawer or a cabinet for each child instead of all thrown together in one big bucket, all of their children, all of their years, right? Instead, they'll have a little cubby hole where they put just that child's records, information, tests, or just that child for that particular year. That has a huge benefit if you can do cubbies, right? It's sort of like moving up the food chain. If you're a cubby, you'll know which child did the paper because when you're homeschooling, chances are you don't make your kids put their name on their paper because you have so many, fewer children than a school teacher would. The problem comes is towards the end of the school year, you'll start to realize that all of your children had the same penmanship instructor. And so their writing starts to look more and more the same. The other thing that can happen is school becomes a blur and one year kind of rolls into the next year and you can literally forget what year you taught something. So if you find in your tubby an American history paper, you might not even remember what year you did American history. Could be this year, could be 4 years ago. I don't even know, right? So by having a cubby for each child for each year, then you have more information when you go back to recreate your information. Now, the third kind of record keeping strategy is what I call the binder queens. If you've ever gone to any homeschool group of any kind or convention, you can point these people out easily. They are the ones that literally are carrying a binder worth of information with them wherever they go. Now, binder queens are great because if you have a binder with all that information at the beginning of the school year, you might have a divider with each class that you intended to teach, right? This is really helpful because as school goes on, you're going to be filing pieces of paper behind each of those dividers. But because you started with this plan of even making dividers at the beginning, then you'll know to go back and look for records in all of those subjects. So for example, maybe you've decided this is the year we're going to do PE, or this is the year we're going to do piano. But you get halfway through the year and all of a sudden you realize I have nothing in my records for PE or piano, right? And then you can start to brainstorm, okay, I am teaching this class. I need to think of some records that I can create, whether that's ribbons for their different competitions in PE, or whether it's a list of their performance ready pieces and the programs from the Christmas program, right? All of those things would be records that you would then know to keep. So the benefit then of being a binder queen is that you've intended to keep records on these things, but then you can actually go back and intentionally keep records on those things. So if you were a binder queen and you could not think for the life of you of anything that you could keep for this delight directed learning thing your child does. She does crochet all day long. I'm going to give her a credit for crafts, but how would I record something like that? Well, at that point, halfway through the year, say, you could just say, I want a 1-page paper on how to crochet a frog. And she writes this 1-page paper, and presto, all of a sudden you have records for crochet. So that binder queen has a definite benefit. Okay, a little more information. You know what you don't have, so you can fill that need. The fourth kind of record keeping strategy are those people that I fondly call the question marks. Right? Those are people that have a giant question mark over their head. They get to the end of high school and they say, records? Nobody said anything to me about records. I never even knew that there were records. I didn't know to keep records, right? Well, unfortunately, you now given up your right to call yourself a question mark, because I just have told you you need to keep records, right? So, oh bad, so sad. But I don't want you to be a question mark. Being a tubby, great way to keep records. Being a cubby, great way to keep records. Being a binder queen, more power to you. Fantastic record keeping. Question marks, I can't recommend it. It gets a 1 star on the Google reviews there. Okay. Now let's talk about, when do you keep records? You only need to keep high school records during high school, unless it's required by your state law in some other way. But really, it only boils down to having a transcript in high school. And that's usually the sum of your records. And so you do want to keep your records early, though, because it is common for children that are in middle school to occasionally get a class that's high school level that could go on their high school transcript. And you want to know what that is, and you want to put it on their high school transcript. So if they're doing math, that's algebra 1 or higher, goes on their transcript. If they're doing science, that is high school biology or greater, that goes on their transcript. If they're doing foreign language using a high school curriculum, that goes on their high school transcript, even if they do it in middle school. So you want to be keeping records early enough in high school, by 9th grade, so that you'll know if they were to be collecting these early high school credits in 8th grade. So let's talk about, what records do you need to keep? Really quickly, there's just 3 kinds, all right? Number 1, you want to keep records that are required by your state or local homeschool law. So if your child wants to go into the military, become a police officer, or for some other reason, state law is important, the FBI, the CIA, right? You can prove that you've obeyed state law. So for example, in my state of Washington, we are required to keep immunization records with our homeschool records. Now, we're not actually required to immunize. We're only required to keep the records. And so that's an easy enough requirement for us to meet. Number 2, you want to keep what will be needed for college admission. Okay, so how do you do that? College admission will usually require transcript, course descriptions, activity list, and reading list. And so that's the last way that you keep records, is to make sure that you create course descriptions in your high school transcript. Whether your child is going to college immediately and you need that for college admission, whether they go to college after they've completed their own homeschool parenting, they grew up, they got a family, they homeschooled their own children, and then they decided that was so much fun, I am going to get a teaching degree, or I'm going to go back to nursing school, right? If they want to go to college at that point, even when they're 40 years old, they're still going to need their high school transcripts and course descriptions. So that's why you want to be keeping your records so that you're prepared for anything. Remember that as a easy peasy way to solve the problem, get a big box or Rubbermaid tub, put it in the corner of your homeschool, and you will be ready to create great homeschool records that way. And you can be successful. Even if you are not naturally a binder queen, you can still find success that way. The number one way to make sure you're successful with your homeschool records is to make sure that you're keeping your records every single year of high school. And the best way to make sure that you do that is to remove your fear and the mystique around homeschool records. So in junior high, 7th, 8th grade, you're learning about high school record keeping so that in 9th grade, there is no barrier between you and success, and you can just jump right in to your record keeping and be successful. Okay, so I hope that that has explained how easy record keeping is and how do you solve the biggest problem by just learning more about record keeping. Have a great day.